National Association of Estate Planners and Councils. And Susan is going to be talking to us about the Accredited Estate Planner designation. Susan is from the national office, and she will bring the program this afternoon by reviewing the requirements and the application process for the self-nomination, as well as the council nomination for the Accredited Estate Planning designation. And we're going to briefly discuss the council nomination process. Susan is also administering the Estate Planning Law Specialist Program, which is a national board certification for estate planning attorneys, only which is accredited by the American Bar Association. She has been with the national office for 16 years, working with both of these certification programs. And when I reached out to Susan to ask her about the best way for us to give more feedback and more information, we decided this would be a great venue. So I'm going to encourage questions. I'm going to hand this over to Susan, but feel free to enter your questions in the chat session. And we will also have a question session at the end of Susan's presentation. So with no further ado, Susan, I'm going to give it to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you all, and thank you to the leadership for inviting me today. This is a real treat because I get to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart. I do want to provide just a little bit of background information, but as Elizabeth said, please feel free if you have any questions during my presentation. The more interactive, the better. And sometimes when we have one question, it leads to other questions. So I welcome those at any point. I want to give just a little background about the designation program and the NAEPC. The designation was established in the early 1990s, in part to encourage the recognition and acceptance of estate planning as a discrete area of practice. It does remain the only national graduate level multidisciplinary designation with the core mission of the team or collaborative approach to client relationships. The NAEPC cultivates the multidisciplinary approach to estate planning by serving its members, of which you all are one. We have approximately 275 estate planning councils nationwide, and they represent an estimated 30,000 individual members of the councils. Included with that is a growing number of AEP designees, I'm happy to say, and I hope that today's program will encourage you all to think about applying. I always like to start by sharing our mission statement. At its core is the promotion of excellence in estate planning, as I've mentioned, by serving our members, of which the Rochester Estate Planning Council is one. And in so doing, by delivering exceptional resources and unsurpassed education, and also recognizing those members who hold the estate planning law specialist certification. The reason that designation is specified in our mission is that our AEP designees are automatically members of national. That is not the case for the EPLS certificates, so we do include them in our mission statement. Love to give you just a little snapshot, share some numbers. We're all numbers oriented. So I've mentioned that we have 275 affiliated local estate planning councils. They're 30,000 members. We currently have approximately 2,200 accredited estate planner designees, and then 88 estate planning law specialists, a little smaller program. Of that 2,200 of our AEP designees, people are always interested in what is the makeup in terms of disciplines. So for purposes of the AEP program, there are 5 disciplines that we recognize. For our purposes, insurance and financial planning is considered one discipline. Those members make up almost 60% of that 2,200. Followed by practicing attorneys. They come in, we have a quarter of our active designees are estate planning attorneys, and that is followed by about 12% are in the accounting discipline. Trust officers and relationship managers come in at around 6%. And then about 5 to 6 years ago, we began recognizing philanthropic advisors. We always recognized how important the legacy planning, gift planning is to the estate planning process, but our AEP program had not been designed to recognize those individuals. And so we modified our program. And in doing so, we actually added 2 designations. One is the Charter Advisor in Philanthropy, and the other is the Certified Specialist in Plan Giving, because not to say that those are the only ones that philanthropic advisors hold, but often those are increasingly more prevalent in that community. So that kind of gives you an idea of who we are and what our designees look like. One is awarded the designation through an application process. And we got it. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Welcome back.
I am so sorry. I'm going to back up on my screen. Let me just start again by saying thank you for your patience. I want to mention that, and I am going to go over the requirements again. I have gotten pretty far through that. Sorry about that. But I want to just stress that the core value of both our national organization and our designation program is the team concept of estate planning. That is really what sets the AEP designation apart from other credentials. Everything that we do here at National, and hopefully in helping support you as one of our council members, really builds upon this single principle. And one way that we stress this with our applicants and then ultimately with our designees, all applicants must sign as part of the application process an applicant's declarations page. And in that, there are any number of things that the applicant is verifying. All credentials that they hold are active and in good standing, that they support the team approach, that they agree to abide by the NAEPC Code of Ethics, very, very important to us. While all applicants, certainly by signing the document and agreeing to that, and agreeing in theory that this team approach is so critical to service to our clients, sometimes putting that team together or in place, it happens organically for some individuals. Sometimes it's where they're located, the firm with which they work, but for others, it's a little bit more challenging. So in order to help our designees and members of the council, you don't have to be an AEP to enjoy what we think are supportive services from the national office. We established a national committee on multidisciplinary teaming, and they were dedicated to offering practical guidance on how to put together a high-performance multidisciplinary team. And while incorporating collaboration in a way more deliberately and in a very meaningful way into everyday practice. And something that I just want to point out, and this is available to you as members of the council. You don't have to be a designee. You don't even really have to be a member. Most of what is on the NAEPC website is not password protected. So we feel that's just very important. And if you ever have a few minutes, I'd encourage you to take a look. It's at naepc.org. But one of the what I think is so helpful to anyone thinking about pursuing the AEP or people who are actively practicing and putting that team approach in place. This multidisciplinary teaming created a 30-page white paper on high performance teaming and how you put that team together. And sometimes white papers, I think, can be seen as somewhat academic, but this is actually, it's a collaborative, it was in and of itself a collaborative effort. And it really provides a lot of practical guidance on how to put that team together. So I encourage you to take a look at it. You can download it, you can print it, you can share it. We just think it's a detailed yet really pragmatic guide. So back to the requirements. I'm sorry, I'd almost finished this part. So I should be well aware of what I'm getting ready to say. The minimum experience requirement and the screen that you're looking at right now, this applies to all applicants with a few exceptions, but the main core requirements all applicants must meet. That council nomination process offers a more streamlined application, and I will go over that in more detail just a little bit later. So minimum of 5 years, actively engaged in estate planning. And by that, our expectation is that you're devoting at least a third of your professional time to the estate planning portion within those 5 disciplines that I mentioned earlier. Also, I always like to point out, I don't think you heard it, but I was mentioning that underlying gateway credential, the 12 that we accept currently are listed on the screen that you can see now. Those, with the exception of practicing attorneys who obviously are going to have to hold an active law license, and the same for public accountants, they must have an active CPA license. The other credentials do not necessarily have to align with the discipline under which you are practicing. And we just find that sometimes that's not as clear as we hope it will be. So for example, we have philanthropic advisors who come into our program not holding the CAP, which is the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy, or the other designation, the Certified Specialist in Plan Giving, but they do have an active law license, or they hold the CFP certification. So that's perfectly fine. It's just that you must hold one or more of these 12 credentials, designations, or degrees. I also want to point out that from the beginning of our program, we have accepted the MSFS, the Masters of Science in Financial Services, through the American College. And we also, about 5 or 6 years ago, when we added the philanthropic discipline, we added some other credentials. And so we also added the CFA, which we're finding we have increasingly applicants who hold that, the CPWA, and then we also added the MST, which is the Masters of Science in Taxation. You'll notice that there are 2 asterisks by the MST initials. So anyone who's applying with the MST only must receive pre-approval from the national office before completing and submitting the application. So let me I want to mention that there are 2 other points here on the screen. We do have a professional reference requirement, which we feel is very important to supporting the character and commitment of the applicant to the estate planning profession. We asked for 3 professional references. Now, parenthetically, it says unless you're nominated by the council. That is a difference, and I'll get into why that's a difference when I talk about the council nomination program. One of the referrers must share your same primary discipline, and then the other 2 need to be drawn from the remaining 4 disciplines that we recognize, so that 3 of the 5 disciplines are reflected in your professional references. And you might ask, why do we do that? But again, this is another way of supporting the team or collaborative approach to estate planning, in that you're working with allied professionals in service to your clients. Also, very important, we do require membership in one of our affiliated councils. I know you all are all aware of that as members of your council. And in order to maintain the AEP designation, you must maintain that membership. And that is actually provided. We have an annual recertification and dues renewal process for all applicants. And so that information has to be verified on an annual basis. I'll get to this just a little bit in terms of, well, let me back up one thing I want to just mention. anyone who applies with that minimum experience of 5 years, but has not yet reached 15 years actively engaged in estate planning, is required, and this is typically those individuals who are a little bit, in the earlier stages of their careers, which of course we encourage. We're delighted to have, we're seeing an increase of applicants who are a little bit, earlier in the stages of their careers. But we do require 2 additional graduate level courses. We partner with the American College of Financial Services to offer that coursework. There's one required course, and it is Advanced Estate Management and Plan Giving. That was formerly named Advanced Estate Planning, but they have enhanced that course, and we felt it was much in line with what our goals are for our applicants and then ultimately designees. So we had a subcommittee that met to review, as we do for any changes, either through the coursework or any other part of our program. That's something that is actually guided by our oversight committee. So they reviewed.
Susan,
Yes.
we would like you to clarify the difference between AEP and CEP, Certified Estate Planner.
Right. Okay, great. Well, thank you for a question. Wonderful. So the Accredited Estate Planner designation, I think what I would just say, because the CEP is also a national certification, but what really sets the AEP apart, and I may have said this while I was offline, but is that core mission of the collaborative or team approach to estate planning. The other difference is that we do require, and I've kind of highlighted one or more of these 12, what we call our underlying or gateway credentials. That is not a requirement for the CEP. They do have an experience requirement, as I understand it, and they also have a continuing education requirement, but their focus is not the focus that we have, as I mentioned, which is everything we do from national is supportive of that core value of the team approach to estate planning. So those are some of the ways that there is a difference. I think the other thing that really stands out is that because we at National have such a close relationship with our affiliated councils, and the fact that we require that membership to be eligible to apply for the AEP, it's in place because we just feel there's no substitution for being actively involved on the local level. What you all provide in terms of your own programming, hopefully you have used some of the programming that we offer too. We have our monthly webinar series, and we do some other programming as well, specifically for our designees. But just that communal opportunity for professional networking and the camaraderie that is available at the local level that we can't duplicate through national. I would say that is something that again really sets us apart. So not to necessarily take anything away from the CEP, we have I've increasingly seen applicants come in who have the CEP. It's not a credential, that we accept for purposes of our program, but we have, so they hold one of the others that you see on the screen, but we're increasingly seeing people who hold that. So that brings me to another point, if I may, and I don't know, were there other questions, Terry, before I go on?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
You were talking about the courses that were required.
Yes.
I started down this path, so I took the advanced estate planning. I think it was last year, maybe a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Would I have to take the new course, or would I be grandfathered in?
No, thank you so much for that question. And actually, in our materials, we make a point of stressing that anyone who's applying with the former course, the GS 815, the advanced estate planning, that absolutely still qualifies. So thank you for that. And some of the other courses, we have 5 electives. some of those have likewise been renumbered and have a slightly different title. But for our purposes, any of the courses that you have taken that were formerly part of our program by name and number they're still active and eligible. And we don't have any time limit. So I had applicants who come in who took the coursework 6 or 7 years ago. It's still valid for our purposes. The one thing that would be different along the lines of coursework is when you come into the program and going forward, we do require 30 hours of continuing education, 15 of which must be in estate planning and estate planning topics. And I can share a little bit more information about that as well. That minimum of 30 must be earned every 2 years. So when you apply, again, the expectation is that you have earned 30 hours during the prior 24 months. And then going forward, we have an annual recertification, as I mentioned, but for purposes of the CE, we're always looking back to the 2 prior calendar years. So we're in our recertification process now. We're on a calendar year here at National. So those members who are renewing and recertifying, they're looking back to the CE that they took in 21 and 22. Our annual recertification process is on the honor system. So we're not requiring on an annual basis that you submit the documentation to support that you are meeting all the requirements to maintain the designation, but we do audit a certain percentage of our designees on an annual basis, and it's a randomly selected audit. Everyone's going to have a chance to participate. We do have a couple of situations where it's audit for cause, but the majority are randomly selected. And then if selected for audit, we would ask that you submit verification of having met the CE requirement, verification that all of the other credentials that you hold are likewise active and in good standing, and confirm that your membership in the local council is active. So great question. I got off a little bit on something else. Carrie, do you know if there are any other questions? Or does anyone have a question while I'm sort of pausing here a little bit?
There are none in the chat at the moment. Anyone
Okay.
else have a question they'd like to share at this time, or shall we proceed? I take silence as an issue to proceed.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I think again, I may have stressed one other point that I do want to mention now earlier. So a part of the application process, as I mentioned, this core value of the team approach, we also stress that all of our members are expected, and they make a commitment to continue to uphold the NAEPC Code of Ethics. Very, very important to us and to the profession. So this is also demonstrated in the application itself. There is an applicant declarations form that all applicants sign. And again, it's a verification statement that all of the requirements have been met, that you will abide by the Code of Ethics, and that you do commit to the team approach of estate planning. May I ask, did you all happen to hear when I was speaking about the multidisciplinary teaming white paper?
You broke off just as you were presenting that. You said they had a 30-page white paper,
Okay.
and then you froze.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I do want to go back to that because and it kind of brings me to another point too of the sort of the benefits that we hope we are offering to you from National. Most of the NAEPC website, which is naepc.org, is not password protected. So anyone can have access to the information that's on our website. And I just really encourage anyone who has a few minutes, I know we're all so busy, but to take a look. There are just a couple things I want to highlight at this point. One is that about 6 years ago, we convened a national multidisciplinary teaming committee made up of practitioners all over the United States. And part of what they did, it was a collaborative act. They developed a 30-page white paper on how to put together the team. And as I was mentioning earlier, for some applicants and designees, that's really quite an organic process. But for a lot of individuals putting that team together, they need some guidance. And this white paper will really provide that. It's detailed, but it's also a very pragmatic guide. So I really encourage you to take a look at that. The other, and as I mentioned, only one part of the website is password protected, and that is the AEP portal. And that's where designees can go to find, that's where you can recertify and renew. That's where you can have access to all the back issues of our electronic newsletter, the AEP alert that comes out bi-monthly, and any other member benefit that's only for designees. That's where you'll find that information. But one of the other things I want to mention before I move on is we publish and release electronically, it is not in hard copy, the NAEPC Journal of Estate and Tax Planning. It's issued 3 times a year. It's under the tab on our website for publications, because there are some others, but I really highly recommend this. It is such a great resource. We archive all of the articles. You can actually search by topic, author, or if you have a title of an article, you can do a word search. It's really easy to go through and find, you know, if you have a topic that you're interested in or doing some research. One of the goals of we have a relatively new editor-in-chief, and he has an editorial team. So I'd like to encourage anyone who is interested in being published. We welcome new content from members of our councils, from our designees. You'll have assistance in terms of the editorial board will review your article. If they have suggestions, often they do not. So don't feel like, uh-oh, is this going to be critiqued? But I really encourage you to think about that, because it's a really nice way to be published in a national publication. So our new editor-in-chief, his name is Ido Walney. He's a practicing attorney out of Milwaukee. His goal has been to encourage new authors, original content, so that we can build up the content of first impression in our journal. In years past, we've always had some original content, but our goal is to have almost exclusively original. But we do partner with other national organizations such as ACTEC, the LISI service, that's the Steve Leinberg Research and Information Service. So we do share information that way. Sometimes they'll publish something that we have, you know, first published in our journal. But it's just really, I think it's just a great resource, and I always encourage people to take a look at that if you have a moment. I know I've got to move along here because we want to hear from some of our designees, but I do want to just take a few moments to talk about the council nomination program. And I'm so happy to report, and you may be aware of this, but of the total number of designees in your council, over half were nominated by the council. So thank you for that. It's a great opportunity to be introduced to the AEP designation. And the council nomination is initiated by the council leadership, and it's actually put into motion. The leadership, the current council president, so Elizabeth, along with one other council officer, would sign what is called a council nomination resolution. And that, in essence, is supporting your candidacy as a council nominee. And before, when I mentioned that the requirements that I've gone over that I have still in front of us, those apply to all applicants with that exception of the 3 professional references. And I'm going to get to the part 2. We've already talked about the self-nomination. And I just want to mention that, get to the council nomination. We started this program in 2004 because we really recognized that as a council leader, you would have a good idea of who in your council might be interested and be someone that you would like to recognize with the nomination. And when you read the council nomination form, It is recognizing that you're an exemplary estate planner, one who's been actively involved in the council. Often councils will, maybe if they're starting the program for the first time, they will look to their leadership, and you all can decide, who in your council might be interested and whom you would like to nominate. Some councils actually open it up, and I think we're doing that today, to anyone who's listening, that if you're interested, please let Elizabeth know, because the council would have to make that final decision for this reason. So as an affiliated council with over 100 members, you're entitled to nominate 2 candidates in each of those 5 disciplines that I've mentioned, plus 2 additional on a calendar year basis. So up to 12 candidates. For some councils, we have some councils that participate each year in this program, which is wonderful. And so they have to kind of limit it because, and so maybe they'll reach out to a list that their council leadership has said, I'm aware that these individuals are interested. Others open it up fully to the council at large and just say, let us know, if you're interested. So as I mentioned before, those 3 professional references are not required for council nominees because that council nomination resolution stands in for those. We also discount the application fee by 50%. And so the application fee is currently $350. So for council nominees, it would be $175. We do ask that all applicants submit the first year dues to national at the time of application, and those are currently $175, which we've kept these rates at the same amount for quite a few years, and we try to do that. We don't want to discourage anyone from being able to apply based on cost. So for council nominees, the total amount due would be $350. The other difference I want to point out is that the minimum experience requirement, unlike for the self-nominating, which is 5 years, it is 10 years, same active engagement, devoting at least 1/3 of your professional time to the estate planning portion. Likewise, that graduate coursework that we've talked about is not required for council nominees. So as you can see, it is a more streamlined, process. Certainly encourage, anyone who is interested to please let, your council leadership know. And I'd be happy to work with you on this in any way that I can, whether you're interested in coming in under the self-nomination or the council. The 2 applications for self-nominating applicants, the difference there is that for those individuals with 15 years of experience or more, that application does not contain the educational coursework requirement. But both of the self-nominating applications appear on the NAEPC website. You can download those. If you're interested, I'm happy to email you either of those, which would be appropriate for you. I'm going to just gone over the council nomination. This is just a screen I like to share. It's got my name, my email address, and the toll-free number here at the national office. But anyone who's interested, I'm happy, if you do have questions and would like to discuss those one-on-one, please feel free to reach out via, phone or email. Partly because we do not at the current time have the ability to password protect that application part of the website. The council nominated application does not appear on the website. So if you are interested, I'm happy to email that to you, or I can email it to Elizabeth, and then she can share that with you. But that is a special application, so you would certainly want to let someone know that you are interested in applying in that way. And thank you so much. I've gone on quite a bit. I hope that's been helpful. And Elizabeth, I'm delighted to know that you might share some comments with your fellow members.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I will mention to everyone that we do have copies of the application for the council nomination. So definitely reach out to me or through EPC through our website. So that information will get forwarded to me if you're interested. So I thought I would just spend a few minutes talking about the benefits of holding the designation. I don't know how many years I've had it, but I've probably had the designation for at least maybe 6 or 7 years.
Mhm.
And for me, it was a matter of increased credibility. So it was another tool in my tool belt for working with other professionals and also with clients. So I think it has provided me with increased credibility. It has been helpful in my practice because you mentioned, Susan, the webinars that are offered through the national. It is something that I participate in on a monthly basis, and I get a lot of good information from them that I can use in my practice, as well as just continuing education, which is so important in this field. There's always things that are changing. And I think, but I can't give you measurable result, but I believe that clients have a better outcome and that their satisfaction with the estate planning process overall is very positive. They like and they embrace that team approach. And I think we tend to, as professionals, we lose sight of the lingo and the day-to-day information that is very common to us. But when people are faced with these planning issues, or especially at the time of death, these can be overwhelming times for them. And having a team that works with them is extremely valuable. At least that's the feedback that I've gotten. So I think it's a very complementary designation. It doesn't compete. I thought it was a great question about the CEP versus the AEP. I think they bring their own very different values to your practice. But I think I'll just end there by saying, I think that it gives you increased credibility. It helps you to continue that team approach that clients find so valuable in this very complex field. So thank you, Susan. I'm really excited that we had such a great turnout. I see now we've got 23 people. We are recording this session and it will be available on our website. So if you've missed something or you want to go back and review, that information will be available. And I know you've given us, Susan, brochures. So we have that information. Please reach out to us at EPC Rochester if you are interested. Our hope is that the council will have some nominations that we can present in our annual meeting in May. So we have enough time, but we are definitely moving forward with this. So if you're interested, reach out to me.
If I may just make one more comment about, and thank you, Elizabeth, that you really touched on the things that we hope our designees are finding, beneficial by holding the designation. One of the things that we offer, and again, this is on our national website, we have a searchable database, and you can search by state or zip code and by discipline. And the only individuals who reside there are active AEP designees, the majority. We do have some EPLS individuals on there as well. But the nice thing is, again, it's not password protected, and we're finding increasingly that consumers are using that, to find a professional in a discipline that they are seeking assistance in. And then also our designees find they use it quite frequently because they may have a client who needs help in another state or another jurisdiction, and they're looking for a referral. So I just encourage you maybe to take a look. You can find yourself on there. If you're not there, let me know.
That's great information,
Yeah.
Susan. I wasn't aware of that. So
Oh, okay.
we do oftentimes get asked for referrals from other areas. So that's great resource.
Sometimes we
I
get
learned
phone
something
calls,
today too.
even from designees who are, as I say, they may have a client in another state that needs something that they're not able to. So it really is a nice way. And sometimes people will call and they're just like, please, help me. I don't think I found what I'm looking for. And I'm happy to do that as well. But it's a very easy, it's under the AEP tab on the website. And when you scroll across AEP, there's a drop-down menu. And the second link is search for. So you just click on that. And then, as I say, you can search by state or zip code I encourage people to search by state because we're one of the smaller programs. So sometimes when you limit it to a zip code, you're maybe excluding people that might still be, geographically relevant for you. So that's good. I'm so glad that you know that. Oh, great.
Just
And Lynn said she's used it.
Oh,
Wonderful.
yeah. I was just going to read that to you. Lynn Carlton said, I've used this and it has been very helpful from referring clients in other areas. So thank you, Lynn.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I'm going to be respectful of time. We did this in an hour, under an hour. If we don't see any more questions, I'm going to again thank you, Susan, for your time. Thank you, EPC, for hosting, and thanks for the participants with our technology glitch. Everyone hung in there, and I really appreciate it.